Scratch built and budget miniatures can actually look way better than ones made using expensive materials and paints. I was shocked when I saw you could make crazy looking banners, posters and homemade washes like these on a tight budget. So, in this video I'll show you how to make these banners, posters, some DIY washes and 7 more money saving hobby hacks. Hack number 1. Banners and posters on miniatures or terrain make them look amazing. However, not every kit comes with banners, posters or transfers to make them. But I'm here to show you that you can easily make some for yourself. You can simply print out some nice banners or posters you find on the internet. Cut them to the appropriate size and apply them using some PVA glue on the back, and use some watered down PVA on top of it. The watered down PVA will soak into the paper, allowing you to shape it or tear it easily. Once it dries, it will stay in the exact same shape you put it in. The same goes for the banners. And you don't even need to look for banners specifically. You can use a nice image from a magazine, for example, or in this case from a Warhammer rules sheet which I printed out a while ago. To make some posts for the banner, you can simply use some wooden skewers. And just like with the poster, you can shape it by letting it soak up some watered down PVA, and you can dirty it down afterwards with some washes as well. Alternatively, you can try to freehand your own design as well. But if you're not very good at freehand painting like me, you can also use these banners which I designed on my computer and print them out for yourself. You can find them on my website. They are pay what you want, so you can get them for free if you'd like. They're quite simple, but I think they look great. Now, let's move on to the next hack where I'll show you an alternative for those expensive washes in case you also want to try and dirty down your banners or posters. Hack number 2. Washes are expensive, especially if you use them a lot on things like big terrain pieces. But I'm here to show you how to make your very own cheap washes. You'll only need a few things. Acrylic ink to color the wash, but paint also works if you're on an even tighter budget. Some acrylic matte medium, some dish soap, and of course some water. The ratios depend on the specific ink or paint you're using. A good starting point is 8 parts water, 2 parts matte medium, 1 part acrylic ink, and 1/4 part dish soap. Since paint has a lot less pigment in it than ink per volume, you'll need to use relatively more. So for the paint-based wash, you'll need 5 parts water, 2 parts medium, 3 parts paint, and again 1/4 part of dish soap. The dish soap is added to these washes to help it flow better and prevent pooling. Compared to Warhammer Nuln Oil, the ink wash is about 17 times cheaper. And since I use cheap dollar store paints for the other wash, it's about 90 times cheaper for the same amount of wash as the Nuln Oil pot. And honestly, I don't think most people will be able to tell the difference anyways. And in the next hack, I'll show you something else you can buy at the dollar store, which is very useful for your kit bashing and scratch building. Hack number 3. If you're a bit of a hoarder like me, you've probably saved a bunch of random junk and miniature bits. Most people, including me, store these in only 1 or 2 big containers or just all over the place, which makes it quite hard to find exactly what you need when you do finally want to use it. But I have since changed my ways. I bought a bunch of these cheap cases at the dollar store to sort out all of my hobby materials. This case, for example, contains all of my plastic bits. And as the name implies, this case contains pieces of plastic toys and other random plastic junk, all roughly sorted by size. This case contains my long bits. And no, not those long bits. It contains everything like various straws, coffee stirrers, wooden skewers, toothpicks, and some bamboo chopsticks. And these are my round bits, which I normally don't show on camera. Forget I said that. This case contains things like bottle caps, toy wheels, and empty tape rolls. And last but definitely not least, I sorted out all of my miniature bits, which I separated into 2 cases. One containing only sci-fi bits from things like my Warhammer 40k miniatures, and the other for only non-sci-fi bits. I sorted all of the bits by type, like left arms, right arms, heads, weapons, and I labeled everything as well. This took me quite some time to sort out, but it's definitely worth it since it makes it a lot easier to find what I'm looking for when I need it. And as another extra bonus hack, If you don't have a label maker like me, you don't need one, you can simply use a marker and some cheap painter's tape to label everything instead. It doesn't look as clean, but it works just as well. Hack number 4. Personally, I don't like using a wet palette. I think it's just too much of a hassle. So, whenever I'm painting something, I still use one of those cheap plastic dollar store paint palettes. And I've been using the same one for many years now. But at some point the entire thing will just be covered in paint, making it hard to tell where you put down your fresh paint and how it will look on your miniature. So, whenever I reach this point, I simply prime my entire palette using the same primer I use for my miniatures. And since it's the same primer as my models, I can already see how each paint will look on my miniature before applying it. I believe I saw this hack in a video by Midwinter Minis. I couldn't find the exact video, but I'll just leave a link to his channel in the description. And as a bonus hack, if you've been using the same palette for as long as I have, a bunch of texture will build up from all the dried up paints. Don't try to remove this, because this makes it a perfect dry brushing palette as well. Hack number 5. Whenever you're making some terrain or decorating a miniature base, sometimes you just want it to look like the ground is littered with a bunch of dirty debris. So I'll show you a quick way to achieve this effect. First, you'll need some actual debris or trash. This can be anything like the scraps which accumulate on your hobby desk, some miniature bits, some piece of plastic, or some sand and pebbles. Throw some filler and PVA glue into a bowl and add all of your scraps along with a bit of brown paint. Then mix it up until you get a thick, chunky brown paste and apply it to the surface of your terrain or base. And since we already colored it with the paint, I only applied a wash over it and dry brushed it afterwards. And I think it looks great. And the best part is, you're using some actual trash to make this. I mean, it doesn't get much cheaper than that. Hack number 6. If you've ever scratch built something using cardboard, you'll know that it tends to warp very easily if you apply some glue or paint to it, which kinda sucks, because it's such an abundant material which most people can get their hands on for free. But I'm here to tell you that there is a way to prevent this. As you can see, applying glue to only one side heavily warps the cardboard pieces. But if you then apply some glue to the other side as well, it will straighten it out again once it's fully dried. So by applying glue on both sides, the warping on either side cancels each other out. That's all it takes to turn a free material like cardboard, which you might normally avoid using, into something which is actually usable. Hack number 7. One feature that can make a building look a lot more interesting is pillars. It immediately makes a building look more grand and impressive. And I'm gonna show you exactly how you can easily scratch build some pillars for your very own terrain. The only thing you'll need is something long, straight and round, like some wooden skewers or some straws. Cut them all to the length you want your pillar to be, and you'll need 7 pieces of straw or skewer for each of your pillars. Then you can simply glue them together in a bundle with some super glue and attach them to a base or your building. You can also combine the skewers and the straws by gluing some more skewers around the perimeter of the straw pillars to make it look more interesting and detailed. And before you paint it, if you don't want them to be completely smooth, you can also stipple on some filler paste to create a nice texture. And once it all dries, after a quick and simple paint job, this is what the pillars can look like. This is such a simple hack, using some very cheap materials, but the results are amazing. Hack number 8. Anyone who has ever tried to use styrofoam to scratch build something will know that the texture it has is very, very ugly. And this texture is why most people avoid using it entirely. But this doesn't have to be the case. So I'll show you how I managed to make these nice looking bricks for this fantasy house using some styrofoam packaging. But before we even get to hiding the texture, it's important to note that it will be way easier to hide it if you cut the styrofoam as cleanly as possible. So if you're cutting it, use a sharp knife and use multiple passes. If you don't do this and you rush it, instead of cutting it, you will tear the styrofoam and it will expose those round bubbles which the styrofoam is made of. And that uneven texture will be a lot harder to cover up. After cutting all the bricks to size, I glued them onto the building. And after the glue dried, I mixed some black paint with some wood filler to create a thick grey texture paint. I simply stippled thin layers of this onto the styrofoam to give it a new, more rock-like texture. The reason I stipple it on and I only do thin layers is to try and avoid leaving visible brush strokes. In the end, I applied about 2 to 3 layers all over the styrofoam bricks. And after a nice paint job, it looks great. And I don't think anyone would even be able to tell that these bricks were made from free styrofoam packaging if I didn't tell them. Hack number 9. Everyone in this hobby, regardless of what you make, will use PVA glue at some point. It's an extremely useful and versatile glue. However, not everyone will be able to buy cheap PVA glue. But there is an alternative which I've been using for a very long time, and it's wood glue. This works because PVA is actually short for polyvinyl acetate, which is just the polymer which makes the glue work. And this polymer is also used in most wood glues. The only difference is that wood glue is usually a bit thicker. So if wood glue is cheaper than PVA glue at your local discount or dollar store, which is the case for me, buy some wood glue instead. And if you want even more budget-friendly hobby hacks like these, check out this video. And also check out my custom banner designs on my website. They are pay what you want, so you can get them for free, but any support you are able to give me will be much appreciated.